Bonjour et bienvenue à une autre vidéo de français avec Monsieur Robichaud. Hello and welcome to another French help video with Mr. Robichaud. Today's video, we're going to be talking about les articles indéfinis en français. So, indefinite articles in French, and we're going to be focusing on un, une, and des. Alright, so as always, let's start off with a little bit of review. So, what exactly is an article? Well, an article is a word used to modify or describe a noun. It's found right in front of the noun, so right before the noun. There are two different types of articles that can be used depending on a situation. There's definite articles and indefinite articles. In our last video, we looked at definite articles, and this video we're going to be focusing on indefinite articles. So these describe something that is not clear or precise. And three examples of indefinite articles that we use in English are a, and some. So let's start off with some very basic review. So in English, we would use the article a if our noun began with a consonant. So for example, a glass of milk or a cup of flour. We would use the article an if our noun begins with a vowel. So for example, an egg. And last but not least, we would use some if obviously we're talking about a noun that's plural, something that has more than one. Some cookies. Now, in French, we still are going to use the same rule that we used before. The gender and the number must agree with the article. So if the article is masculine, like over here, un ami, it doesn't end with an E and it doesn't end with an ION. So we know it's most likely masculine. So we're going to use un ami. The second option we have is when it's feminine. We're going to use une. So, une amie. And over here, amie ends with an E. So we know it is feminine. Now, the last option we can use is des. And that's when it's obviously plural. So in English, that would translate to some. Des amis. Some friends. So over here, all three are the same word. They all mean friend in English. So ami, ami, and ami. But depending on the word that you use in front of it, les articles, it can change whether it's masculine, feminine, or plural, and we would also either add an E to make it feminine or an S to make it plural. So, as mentioned in my last video, this is one of my favorite questions that I get in class. Monsieur, is the word masculine or is it feminine? Well, there's a very easy answer to this. If a word ends with the letter E, 75% of the time it is feminine. For example, livre in French is a book. Ends with an E, it's feminine. If a word ends with the letters ION, usually it is also feminine. So for example, opinion, opinion, okay, ends with ION, usually it's feminine. But be careful. If a word ends with an S, it's plural. We still need, in some cases, determine if it's masculine or feminine. But in the case of les articles, it doesn't matter because we're either putting les or des in front of it. Okay, so for example, escalier, which is the stairs, it ends with an S, so I'm going to use des escaliers. Okay, you need to always look at the letter before the S to find out if it's masculine or feminine. Okay, the last thing I want to point out, if a noun ends with the letter X, usually it's plural. So for example, les yeux, Y-E-U-X, which means eyes, oiseau, which means birds. And if you notice there's an X at the end, I could also take out the X at the end and it would just mean bird. Same thing over here, I could take off the X from yeux and it would just mean eye. So let's do a couple of these examples very quickly. The first one is escalier. So ends with an S. Let's look at the letter before. It's an R. I know it's not an E and it's not an ION. So R has to be masculine. Next one is illusion. So we're going to look before the S. It ends with an N. So because I have that rule about ION is usually feminine, let's look at the couple letters before that. And it ends with an ION, illusion. So I know in this case it's going to be feminine. And the last one, porte, which is doors. So we look at the last letter, it's an S. We're going to look at the letter before it, which is an E. And E usually indicates that it is feminine, porte. Alright, so as always, let's do a little bit of practice together. So the question asks, écris l'article un, une ou des devant chaque mot. So write either un, une, or des in front of each word. So let's look at the first one, pomme. So Pomme ends with an E, and I know that it is feminine because it ends with the E, so we're going to use une pomme. The next one is raisin. It ends with the letter S, which means it is going to be, you guessed it, plural. So we're going to use des raisins. Number 3 is ananas, which in English means pineapples. So once again, we're going to look at the last letter, and it ends with the letter S, which means it's going to be plural again. So we're going to use des ananas. Number 4, we're going to have melon. So it ends with an N. Let's check it if it ends with an ION. No, it ends with an LON. So it's most likely going to be masculine. Un melon. Number 5, numero 5, we have fraise, which is a strawberry. So we're going to look at the end. It ends with an E. So most likely it's going to be feminine. So we're going to use une fraise. And the very last one, we have citron, which means a lemon. So it ends with an N. Let's check if it ends with an ION. No, it just ends with an RON. So we are going to use masculine, un citron. So that brings us to the end of today's video. So I hope this video helped you out a little bit more of understanding when to use which article indéfini in front of which word. Remember, you've got 3 choices. If it's masculine, you're going to use un. Okay, if your noun is feminine, you're going to use une. And if your noun is plural, which means it ends with an S or sometimes an X, you're going to use des. Now, once again, remember you can always look up your noun in word reference, and it'll tell you if it's non masculin, non féminin, or non pluriel. But try and use those tips I taught you. If it ends with an E, 75% of the time it's feminine. If it ends with an ION, usually it's feminine. And if it ends with an S, it's usually plural, or in some cases an X. So I hope you all learned something, and au revoir et à la prochaine.